Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. So I just wanted to quickly go over some test stuff. I made this PowerPoint while looking at your test that is up. It is assigned right now on AP Classroom. You have until Wednesday. All right, so I'm just going to briefly go through what's going to be on it. I'm not going to go over too much content, so you're going to have to either rewatch the YouTube videos or read your textbook or something. All right, so however works best for you for studying. All right, so this was the first thing we talked about, ecological relationships. You will need to be able to identify a primary producer, also primary, secondary, and tertiary consumers. You will need to be able to identify organisms that compete with each other. And also you will need to know, when I say food webs, I mean like, if you do this, what's gonna happen to the food web? If you do this, what's gonna happen to the food web? So also understand that. You guys are all really great at this. I haven't seen anyone so far that struggled. Primary productivity. You will be asked to use the net primary productivity equals gross minus respiration. So they're going to give you two numbers and you're going to have to solve. We practiced this in class. You all seemed pretty decent at it. You just will need to make sure you know that equation. You will also be asked to describe primary productivity. So it is the rate of photosynthesis over time. You might want to go back and rewatch that video if you feel uncomfortable with primary productivity. All right, so trophic levels. So remember, we have a trophic pyramid, and you need to be able to relate the shape of the pyramid to energy and biomass. So remember, as we go up, energy and biomass decrease, and that's because of the 10% rule. So remember, this is the law of conservation the law of thermodynamics, not conservation of mass, law of thermodynamics. When energy is converted from one form to another, there's always going to be heat lost. And 10%, only 10% gets passed on to the next trophic level. You will be asked to do the 10% rule math, which is pretty easy. You can use a calculator if you really need to, but you could just do it in your head. Just remember that because energy is decreasing as you go up the trophic level, there's going to be less biomass or less organisms at the top. All right, so for the cycles, this is what we spend a majority of our time, I feel like, talking about. You need to know the major sinks for all of the cycles. So remember, sinks are where it's stored. You definitely need to know what the term reservoir means, which I'm not 100% convinced all of you still do. So go back, watch the videos. You also need to know how humans have affected the cycles. All of you have done pretty good with that. You will need to know the major flux arrows for each one. So like carbon, I would say the big ones would be like photosynthesis, cellular respiration, nitrogen. You will definitely need to know nitrification, nitrogen fixation, and denitrification. Phosphorus, maybe like weathering, that's a big one for phosphorus. What am I missing? Oh, water cycle. You'll definitely need to know like infiltration, precipitation, that kind of stuff. One entire FRQ is about the carbon cycle, I will tell you that. So maybe rewatch the carbon cycle video when I go over it. So I actually don't go over it in the carbon cycle. You watch the next one, which is the nitrogen cycle. It's also called carbon cycle review. That's when I go over the carbon cycle. Also, all of this is in your textbook. Read. Okay, so one thing that I did kind of forget to talk about was like, why do we care? Why do we care about these? So for carbon, we care because we are organic beings, which means that carbon is what is a majority of what makes us up. Organic means it contains a carbon and hydrogen. We contain majority carbon, as do all living things. So if carbon isn't going to be cycling, then there's not going to be any life. Water, pretty simple. Without water, we die. Without water, all organisms die, except for maybe like tardigrades. But even then, like they'll die eventually without it. Nitrogen, this one's a little trickier. So it's the key component that makes up amino acids. If you ever take organic chemistry, you'll learn about you'll learn about this. So nitrogen is the main element in amino acids. Without nitrogen, there is no amino acids. And remember, amino acids are what makes up proteins. And proteins, remember, is what our DNA codes for. So without proteins, we would not be here, be alive at all. Phosphorus. You might remember this from living. It is a key component of both DNA and RNA. So remember, along the sides of DNA, we have a sugar phosphate backbone. So without phosphorus, no DNA. So remember, those are called the nucleotide bases, as well as they're a key component in cell membranes. So our cell membrane is called a phospholipid bilayer. So there's phosphorus there. It also is in ATP, which is how we use energy. So I forgot to put that one on the slide. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, is what ATP stands for. The P stands for phosphate. So without phosphorus, we also would not have energy, which would be bad. All right, for the terrestrial biomes, we never really got to go over all of them, but you should have kind of done that in speed dating. I know that you probably didn't get to talk to someone from each biome, and that's okay. I would go through and read about the other terrestrial biomes. It's chapter 4.3 in the textbook. You need to be able to read chromatographs. So these are two examples of chromatographs. So it will always show you precipitation. That's the blue line. And then the red line here is temperature. 30 degrees, so 37 and a half is like our body temperature. That's 98 degrees. So anything like in the 30s, high 20s to the 30s is like hot. 30 degrees Celsius is hot. So for this one, you can see there's a large amount of precipitation and it is hot all year round. This is going to be a tropical rainforest. Over here, you see that there is barely any precipitation. It gets a little chillier in the winter months, but then it gets really, really hot. Also gets a little chillier, but 20 degrees C is still pretty warm. This is a desert, all right? And you can tell because it's really dry and it's hot. The reason that these dip so much is at night in the desert, it does get rather chilly. Okay, so for aquatic biomes, you need to know the abiotic factors that differentiate the aquatic biomes, which I talk about in the aquatic biomes video. So salinity, acidity, DO, nutrient availability, depth, and turbidity. Those are the ones that you need to know for the aquatic biomes. Okay, so for your test, remember, it is on my AP. I posted the link on the stream, I think at least twice, and I emailed you if you have not yet signed in. So you probably, if you haven't signed in yet, you probably have at least 2 emails from me being like, sign in. What are you doing? Sign in. If you haven't yet signed in, find the link to my AP, log in with these codes. If you can't log in, you forget your username and password because you're logging in with your College Board account, I can't reset it for you. You have to figure that out. All right. You have to figure out there's a button that says forgot my username and password. You're like, yes, click it. And then it'll ask you to reset your username and password. Well, it'll give you your username, ask you to reset your password. Bada bing, bada boom, done. If you don't have a College Board account, which all of you probably should because you've all taken the SATs, if you don't have one, create one. You will have 2 hours to take this test, which I feel is very generous, but it is a long test. There are 19 multiple choice questions and there are 2 FRQs, although one is like easy, the other one's kind of hard. So 2 hours is nice. Just remember that 2 hours is nice. It probably could have been an hour and a half and you guys would have been able to do it, but it's up, take it. If you have questions, email me. It's not due till Wednesday. All right. I will have a great weekend and I will see you all on Tuesday. Bye, guys.